Coming up on The World Today. Chaos in Kabul as thousands attempt to flee the country following the Taliban takeover. Analysts join us to discuss whether the U.S. mission in Afghanistan was a failed one. Plus, death toll from the Haiti quake goes much higher. A warm welcome to the program today. I'm Joke Rogers in Lagos. It's been a roller coaster of events happening in Afghanistan following the Taliban takeover of the country. Well, let's bring you up to speed with what has happened in the last hour or so. The head of the U.S. Central Command has met face-to-face with senior Taliban leaders to ask the militia not to interfere with the U.S. evacuations out of Kabul airport. This we are learning from what a U.S. defense official said to the Associated Press after the meetings in Doha. General Frank McKenzie reached an agreement with the Taliban to establish a deconfliction mechanism, meaning the Taliban would not interfere with evacuations. Several people were reportedly killed at the airport, and a video recording appears to show dozens of desperate Afghans running alongside a military transporter plane. And let's remember, all commercial flights were banned from flying yesterday, and only military aircraft is allowed to lift off or land at the Kabul International Airport. Well, speaking of military aircraft, the Uzbekistan Defense Ministry says its air defense forces have shot down an Afghan military jet after it crossed their borders. More evacuations are taking place in Kabul, with flights taken off, and more than 60 countries have issued a joint statement calling on the Taliban to allow people to leave. Here's more in this report.
The chaos at the Kabul International Airport is at its highest. So much so that shots were fired as Taliban fighters tried to control the crowd rushing there today, one day after the militants took over the capital. Some tried to climb over the wall topped with barbed wire. Others tried to rush to the crowded gate near where a jeep for armed Taliban fighters was parked. Thousands of Afghans desperate to leave the country have been thronging the airport, where 5 people were killed earlier today, prompting the U.S. military to suspend evacuations to clear the airfield. The U.S. temporarily halted all evacuation flights from Kabul to clear people who had converged on the airfield. Diplomats on the ground say it is a total disaster trying to get out. One Italian medical doctor said he felt betrayed that no provisions have been made for those left behind. Afghans have resorted to getting to the airport by whatever means necessary. A large number of people were out on the streets of Kabul walking towards the airport. Residents fear the Taliban will return to past harsh practices in their imposition of Sharia religious law. During the 1996 to 2001 rule, women could not work, and punishments such as stoning, whipping, and hanging were administered. One Taliban leader said the insurgents are regrouping from different provinces and would wait until foreign forces leave before creating a new governance structure. Qatar, where talks had been holding over the weekend with representatives of the Taliban and the Afghan government, said it was doing its utmost to help evacuate diplomats and foreign staff in international organizations seeking to leave the country. The country has had good ties with the Taliban and is also working to ensure there would be a complete ceasefire across the country and that stability will prevail. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is calling on the Security Council to act.
We must speak with one voice to uphold human rights in Afghanistan. I call upon the Taliban and all parties to respect and protect international humanitarian law and the rights and freedoms of all persons. We are receiving chilling reports of severe restrictions on human rights throughout the country, And I am particularly concerned by accounts of mounting human rights violations against the women and girls of Afghanistan who fear a return to the darkest days.
Many countries have said their embassies will remain open to ensure the safe evacuations of their citizens.
And the VOA's Aisha Tanzim is on the ground for us in Kabul. Aisha, what's the update with the evacuations, and what has the Taliban been doing since they entered the capital on Sunday?
The evacuations are going on, very, very quickly. We hear the planes coming and going. As far as the Taliban are concerned, they're now all over Kabul. They're running the city in the way that all the things that police was doing before, the checkposts, the Taliban are manning important points like the former U.S. Embassy compound. The Taliban are manning that. Around the airport, there's a huge presence of Taliban. Dr. Abdullah's compound, the Taliban are outside it and manning it. And they're actually doing crowd control around the airport, as you said. They fire when too many people try to get close. But we also watched that they actually have batons, and they're pushing people back, hitting them with batons if they try to come too close. So the Taliban have literally taken over the city. However, the city is closed, so we don't know when offices open and when regular life starts up. What will be the role of Taliban? We hardly saw any government security presence on the streets of Kabul. We saw a lot of Taliban militants with AK-47s in their hand, either on the streets walking or on their motorbikes, driving around the city or in their cars. That's what they're doing. They're going around the city and literally administering whatever needs to be administered.
Thanks again, Aisha, for that update, and please do stay safe.
Thank you.
So joining me now is Major Adebayo Adeleke, who served 2 tours in Afghanistan, and a former permanent secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Joe Keshi. Major Adeleke is in Texas, and Ambassador Keshi is in Abuja. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us on the program today.
Thank you.
So let's begin with you, Major Adeleke. After serving 2 tours in Afghanistan, I'm sure you have asked yourself over and over again whether all that effort has been a waste, seeing all that's happening now in Afghanistan.
Thank you, Amarachi. Actually, I stand corrected. I spent 4 tours in Afghanistan. I deployed between 2006 and 2011. So out of 34 provinces there, I believe I've worked in about 24 of them. Yes, I was conflicted yesterday about the effort that myself and many others, or thousands of others that have served in Afghanistan over the course of time. You know, as I saw the whole thing unfolding like a lawn chair in Afghanistan yesterday, you know, look back at the lot of brothers and sisters that we've lost over the course of time, and was it worth it? Absolutely. You know, at the helm of it, we were looking for Osama bin Laden. That was the first mission set. And of course, the thing changed down the line to, you know, pre-margination building and whatnot, and to what it is right now. So for what it's worth, you know, the effort over there, you know, for everyone that have lost, you know, soldiers out there, for parents that have lost sons and daughters out there, you know, of course, the same question kind of ruminated to their minds, you know, as the whole thing worth it? Because after 20 years of the same thing, of about $2.3 trillion attributed to this whole campaign, you wonder why, you know, at the end of it all, does it all worth it? But for the cause that we did, championing freedom and advocating democracy in the country of Afghanistan, yes, it was well worth it. At the end, the outcome that we which we wish for, wasn't the end of it. At least as a soldier, I mean, on the ground over there, there are two possible outcomes that can come out of it. One is on the pessimistic side, the other one is on the optimistic side. On the pessimistic side is the fact that the Taliban will return and they will run over the country. And on the optimistic side is the fact that the 300,000 Afghan army and the also another few thousands of Afghan national police will come to to the people's rescue, the citizen rescue, and push back the Taliban. Of course, the optimistic side did not prevail, and what we saw is this the pessimistic side. But what really concerned me the most is how easy the Taliban actually walked through as they kind of move from one province to the other until they reach Kabul. And that's the question we have to keep asking ourselves, that despite the training we've done, despite a lot of money, everything we've invested in there, how can this be easy? At least put on some fight, at least, have some dignity. But at the same time, over the course of time, we have these, we as an American have constructed this artificial construct, and unfortunately our construct of democracy doesn't align with their own tribal politics. And we've known about this, but the will to fight was just not there for these guys. And obviously we bled, we sweat on the land, but obviously that did not count for anything at the end of it all. But for us, at least from my perspective and the veterans, and that I speak on behalf of everyone that has served over there, absolutely is well worth it.
Right, so we're still trying to get Ambassador Joe Kashi, but let me ask you, Major Adeleke, you see foreigners as well as locals trying to leave Afghanistan because they fear what the Taliban will do to them. There's also a sense of dread that there could be a return to what pertained from 1999, like you've been given details about. The Taliban, on the other hand, has been assuring residents of safety and stability as well. Do you believe that might likely happen?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I really don't know, because the landscape has changed the last 20 years. I mean, the last time the Taliban ruled, it was a different ball game. And trust me, and if they continue to use the same narrative, it's not going to work. Now that technology has really amped up, I believe there will be some kind of modification, but until their tenets of what makes them Taliban has really changed, I don't foresee them changing. But they said they've changed. I have to give them benefit of a doubt to see what's going to happen. But at the same time, what's going to change? Are they going to allow women and children to go to school and have voice? And those are the things that is still very core to their to what they believe in. Absolutely. So people have to look at the past. They look at like the historical context. The last time they saw Taliban in power, what they did. So they'll look back, because that's the only reference point they have, is what happened 20 years ago. I believe that even the landscape has changed, political landscape, geopolitical landscape has changed. I don't think they will be able to carry out those kind of stuff they did 20 years ago. I don't think they'll be able to do it now. I think some kind of modification will be necessary. At the same time, they've been parading, Russia, China and other countries in the corridor to find some kind of legitimacy to their government. And I don't believe, looking at how China and Russia is trying to pivot to the West, I don't think they will be in support of Taliban going rogue on their citizens. So, but again, we have yet to see them. We have, I mean, they are in power now. Let's see what they have to do.
Thank you again for that, Major Adebayo Adeleke, speaking to us from Texas. Well, still to come on the program, an update on the COVID-19 pandemic around the world. That's in a moment. Welcome back to the program. Let's keep you on track with the happenings in Afghanistan now that the Taliban has taken over the country, and the VOA's Aisha Tanzim is back with us. Of course, she's on ground in Kabul. Aisha, welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
So let's continue with the events in Afghanistan. The Taliban presence now in the country, they've taken over Kabul as well. We've seen thousands of people trying to flee. Commercial flights have been suspended. Only evacuations from foreign countries. Tell us, what the mood is now like in Afghanistan. What are the people's fears at this particular point in time about Taliban rule?
The mood is mixed. Some people are taking a long breath and thanking that there was no attack on Kabul, which would have led to war and which would have killed thousands of civilians. It's a city of 6 million, so street-to-street fighting or bombs dropping or rockets launching would have killed a lot of people. So there's some people are thankful for that. But then now there's this anxious wait. Will the Taliban fulfill the promises they've made? No revenge killing, general amnesty for all, women can relax, they will respect women's rights and human rights. These are promises made by senior leadership, particularly their political office in Doha. But the political office is seen as more worldly wise, more savvy, interacts with international leaders, is invited to various countries. Are the cadre on the ground savvy enough, and are they disciplined enough to know the orders and B, follow them? Today, Kabul was completely shut down. No shop, no mall, no bank, no office was open. People don't want to get out yet until they can get a better sense of how Taliban will behave. So everybody's in their house. The ethnic minorities, the Hazaras particularly, are very worried. They have a history of enmity with the Taliban. Women are worried. Activists are worried, who used to be very active on Twitter and Facebook and often made anti-Taliban statements or criticized the Taliban on their record of human rights. Local journalists are very worried. A lot of them are staying inside because despite the promises, no one knows whether the promises will be followed to the letter and the spirit of the word.
Right. So, and of course, we do know that the Taliban had ruled between 1996 to 2001. And of course, their rule had been, filled with punishments of different kinds, Sharia law and what have you. What do you, I don't know if you've spoken to anyone at this time, since you said most people have been locked inside and the streets are almost empty to a large extent. But what do you think the people think of a Taliban rule now that they've taken over, the country?
It's a mixed bag. It's a mixed feeling. A lot of people are one person that I talked to said, I feel like all of a sudden my country has been thrown back 100 years. Another person said, well, I have a law degree and I don't think there'll be a job or a future for me in this country. A third person said, I'm a student of economics. I don't know whether I have a future. But then there were others who said that the country has seen 20 years of war. It's enough bloodshed. It's time to move on. And yes, Taliban are harsh, but they promise that they've changed. And some people are hopeful that this new brand of Taliban, Taliban 2.0, will be different from the previous Taliban. These are younger Taliban leaders. A lot of older Taliban leaders died in the 20 years of war. So they've been, a lot of drone strikes against Taliban leaders, targeted killings. So the people are hoping that this new younger lot understands the world, understands the dynamics. They want international legitimacy. And if they want to make sure that the money keeps flowing, because the Afghan economy cannot survive on its own. The last year Afghan economy, 80% of it was foreign aid. So if they really want the foreign aid to continue and the country to not collapse economically, they may have to listen to some of the demands of the foreign community. And the foreign community has said that they will stop money if they see violations of human rights, women's rights, etc. We have yet to see both what the red lines are for the international community and whether the Taliban really care, or whether they're okay going back to the rule of the 90s when they had little or nothing in the country, unemployment, poverty, but they ruled.
Right. So, Aisha, if you spoke of journalists not being able to go out much as well. If you and your colleagues are, fearing for your safety, what happens to the residents?
Don't know. I guess an ordinary resident of Kabul is more safe than activists, journalists, or people in the limelight, people that Taliban might identify and target as someone special. Like I said, we have yet to see whether Taliban will fulfill their promises of general amnesty and no revenge. Because a lot of journalists in Afghanistan, local journalists, for example, have been doing stories about atrocities or human rights violations of Taliban, and they're not sure whether their coverage was liked by Taliban.
Can I just butt in there? Sorry.
Yes.
What about you? I mean, as Aisha, are you afraid for your own safety?
Absolutely. Absolutely. When I go out, I cover myself completely, wear an abaya, cover my head, often cover my face. I've been doing my coverage as under the radar as possible, trying not to get noticed, staying mostly in the car, not bringing out my television cameras, using cell phone where TV cameras are usually used. However, there are other international media organizations out there who are out with cameras. So, but as far as I'm concerned, I am trying to stay very under the radar because right now it's too early and it's too soon to see whether these people on the streets, how they're going to react to women, to media, to me being out on the street. Usually on the streets of Kabul, you see a good mix of men and women. I mean, in the Kabul that I'm used to. Today, there were hardly any women on the streets. There were only men, and even less men than usual, only men. And we saw, you know, even with men, their demeanor changed. I mean, usually on the streets of Kabul, you see a lot of men in T-shirts, used to see a lot of men in T-shirts and jeans or in shirts and jeans. Today, almost everybody was wearing this long tunic, shalwar kameez, as they call it. They were, so, you know, you've in one day, you've seen a change in clothing. The one or two, I mean, I saw in total 4 women in the entire day, and they were all fully covered, which is not exactly how women in Kabul used to walk, fully covered, with their faces covered either with the hijab or with the corona masks. Again, wearing corona masks on the street is not very common in Kabul. So there you go. I mean, in one day there's the change, but there's also waiting and watching. Will the Taliban fulfill their promises, or will they just go back on them?
So answers will begin, we imagine we'll get them in the next few days. Thank you so much for your time, Aisha Tanzim, on the ground for us in Kabul. And please remember, stay safe.
Thank you.
And so let's also remind you that the United States began its military mission in Afghanistan following the September 11 attacks in 2001. And on July 2nd, 2021, American troops pulled out of their main military base in Bagram, Afghanistan, under an agreement with the Taliban allowing for the withdrawal of all U.S. forces from the country after a 2-decade war. When asked if a Taliban takeover of the war-torn country was inevitable, President Joe Biden, then on July 8th this year, said, no, it's not. At the same press conference, he said he trusted the capacity of the Afghan military, who is better trained, better equipped, and more competent in terms of conducting war. A little more than a month later, the Taliban, who ruled from 1996 to 2001, swept back to power and routed the US-backed Afghan army as foreign forces withdrew. It took the Taliban just over a week to seize control of the whole country after a lightning sweep that ended in Kabul. Well, that's the world today. Thank you for watching. I'm Jokia Rogers.